In other words, pressure works on this regime. It's clear that Iran is decision-making is guided by a clear cost-benefit analysis, and the more pressure we put on Iran, the more you're going to get results. And while we're pushing the Iranian agenda, I think the U.S. needs to stay focused on what we're all here today to talk about, which is the increasing repression in the Iranian regime. And Iran's repressive behavior, its nuclear program, its support for terrorism, undermining our interest in these regions are all directly related to the lack of democracy at home. They go hand in hand. And until that changes, until there is democratic change in Iran, the United States and our allies around the world will continue to face multiple threats from this regime. It will not change without a hand-in-hand democratic change. And a year and a half ago, before that young man set himself on fire in Tunisia, sparking that wave of protests, Iran's own protests surrounding the 2009 elections demonstrated the hopes and dreams of millions of Iranians and really captivated the world's attention. But as well as we all have seen, unlike in Tunisia and Egypt, the opposite happened in Iran, and the brutality is continuing against the protesters. You have friends and families and relatives who have been subject to not only imprisonment but execution as well. The government severely limits citizens' right to peacefully change their government through free and fair elections. It continues a campaign of post-election violence and intimidation. The government committed extrajudicial killings, executed persons, including juveniles, through unfair trials, sometimes group executions. Security forces under the government's control committed acts of politically motivated violence and repression, including torture, beatings, and rape. The government administered severe officially sanctioned punishments, including amputations and flogging. The list goes on. There are, at the end of last year, over 500 democracy activists and journalists in detention, in prison, and my guess is that number is on the low side. And some of you have experienced the brutality of this, not just during this 2009 election, but in years past. And this regime is still living in the 1970s. But the rest of the world is moving on into the 21st century, living up to standards of democracy and human rights. And while not anywhere near as strongly as we'd like, the international community is mounting increasing pressure on this regime. Earlier this year, the Human Rights Council at the UN, which just a short time ago was considered ineffective by some and an outlet for anti-Israeli rhetoric by others, did appoint an investigator for human rights violations in Iran. And that may not sound like a big step forward, but in the UN context, it's a monumental shift in their behavior. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said he was deeply troubled by reports of increased executions, amputations, arbitrary arrest and detention, unfair trials, possible torture and ill treatment of human rights activists, lawyers, journalists, and opposition activists. And this is a marked change in the international community's approach to trying to stand up to this regime that continues its repressive behavior. And the Arab Spring that's occurred throughout much of the Arab world has put a highlight the failure of the Iranian regime